This is an incoming transmission from the Jersey Shore.
This is Financial Insanity with Scott McLean, powered by McLean Advisory Group. Today you'll hear some of the most important financial information and wealth-building techniques available anywhere.
Let's get this party started, huh?
Do you have a question for Scott and the team?
Am I on the air?
609-488-4646. That's 609-488-4646.
We'll get that information to them by radio.
Now, Financial Insanity with Scott McLean.
Welcome to Financial Insanity, the show where we turn the chaos of finance into a clear path to success. I'm your host, Alex Dingman, alongside, as always, Scott McLean, financial advisor with McLean Advisory Group. Scott, how you doing, my friend?
Ready to dive in the world of risk and reward in finance. This is a fun topic. I thank you for making me talk about that because in my book, we really hit it hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want you to know, Scott, this is always a highlight of my week. I get great energy from you, and I learn a lot every single time. And I am excited to continue talking about your book. And I do want to remind folks, if we talk about something today, it raises questions for you. That phone number for Scott and his team, 609-488-4646. That is 609-488-4646. 4646. for the website. And last week, we went over the introduction and chapter 1 of Scott's book, and you can hear that at the website there for Scott McLean and McLean Advisory Group. But today, we are jumping into chapters 2 and 3 of Three Blind Mice. And chapter 2, Scott, titled Perceptions and Deceptions of Risk and Reward. So let's start with a question here. What exactly is risk in the context of finance?
Well, first of all, the greatest risk anyone has is not taking a risk at all. I want to start with that because there's so many geniuses out there that have great ideas but never implemented, and they think about 3 weeks later or a year later, I thought about that, and they find about an invention they would have had. So the greatest risk is not taking any risks. And so we think about that, Alex. I think about the risk of losing money, the high risk of investments and greater chance of loss. Of course, while the low risk of investments, the safer they are, but again, the lower the returns. And not understanding that, and I think everybody understands that in all fairness, everybody wants cake and ice cream, but they don't want the calories and the fat, and that's where the problem comes. And I think I use in my examples about, as we'll talk about the lottery, and we talk about that, of the risk versus reward.
Right, because understanding risk, it's more complex, Scott, than just knowing how much money you're investing. Please further explain.
You think about some people taking a lottery ticket, low risk because it costs $1, but in reality, the high risk probability, because you're almost guaranteed to lose that dollar. I think it's a forced tax. And conservatively thinking about a government bond is considered low risk because it guarantees a return if held to maturity. Now, I'm looking right in the times when high interest rates and interest rates going down, you actually have a great way of not only getting a nice return, a dividend or an interest payment, but also the capital appreciation as interest rates drop. So you might want to think about that. If you non-bond lovers, this might be a great period in time. I'm not sure. But additionally, we want to look at a thing called beta. It's one's portfolio which measures the relative volatility, the up and downs of the market, like a sewing machine. And so the beta risk factor. I don't want to get any more deeper than that because I might have people turn off the radio and maybe they'll start drinking coffee and put some adult beverage in it. But most people really don't even consider beta. And this is why people visit with us at our firm. When they call in and say, what's my beta rating? Well, I got to look at the portfolio. And so if that's you out there and you don't know the risk factor of your portfolio. In other words, if the Standard & Poor's, the S&P or the Dow Jones drops 40%, could your portfolio drop 50 or 60%? And that happened in, of course, the dot-com bubble and, of course, the interest rate areas spiked up in 2012, 13, 14. So that's really important. How much risk do you really have? And you need to know that. Right. And by the way, Alex, I just had a meeting with a lovely family the other day, and I asked the wife, what kind of risk you have? Oh, I don't want any risk. That's fine. Husband says, yes, we got to make money. What if he dies? Does she know where they stand? And that's the challenge, outliving your money or burning money quicker than you think. Or maybe the two of you, husband, wife, same-sex couple, one does the investment, one doesn't. Are they swimming in a pool they don't know how deep it is?
Yeah. And Scott, as we're talking today about Scott's book, Three Blind Mice, chapters 2 and 3. And Scott, if you would, how do people, when they're approaching investments, how do they avoid this trap, this risk-reward trap? What can folks do?
It's an honest conversation, looking back at history, what happened before, and what did they go through. Alex, you're a young man, and frankly, if I told you to dollar cost average, put money in on every single month, whether the market's up or down, you don't care that much because you're just plowing it away. So you're dollar cost averaging. But on the other side, if you're a little older like me and I'm in my retirement years, can I take that much risk? This is a defining point, because I can tell you there's a lot of kids out there telling mom and dad to get into the AI field or the technology field because it screamed. But if you remember 1999, it was called the tech bubble. And everybody wanted to be in it until it wasn't worth being in it to win it. And you actually had to wait almost 14 years for those monies to come back. So again, beta we talk about as a risk factor, Alex.
Yeah.
Risk factor. How much can you handle?
And we're just giving a little taste of Scott's book, Three Blind Mice, today on financial insanity. Scott and his team, McLean Advisory Group, located right here in Waretown, New Jersey, here in a beautiful Ocean County. That number
is beautiful.
It is. And if you want a copy of that book, the number 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. Now, chapter 3 of the book is titled The Destructive Time and Money Illusion. What is that all about, Scott?
When you think about time is a good decision. It's almost like a good decision is a test of time. And when we think about it, the chaos of not making the right choice, the chaos. And actually, we think about in our first chapter, we talk about the rat race and not understanding your investments. We emphasize the importance of having a team that communicates with one another. Again, time and money illusion. Is it fake? You could show a portfolio of 1, 3, 5, 10 years, which a lot of advisors do, but does it equate for now? And we talk about the analogy of the diving boards and hurricanes explained in the market volatility. Diving boards, real quick, Alex, we spoke about that. And we think about the low dive, high dive, or the medium dive. And so when I was younger, I loved the high dive, but a belly flop off a high dive, the market dropping substantially, versus a belly flop off the low dive, it doesn't hurt as much off the low dive. In other words, the risk, maybe I don't want that much risk. And so the belly flop won't hurt as much. How much risk do we have? And that's called the beta. So the destructive time and money illusion, I think that in the chapter itself is called the time value of money. Can you handle it? Can you not handle it? And if you're in the wrong portfolio, or maybe you're not sure you're in the wrong portfolio, what people do when they come in to visit with us, Alex, during our radio show, we just had a person come in today, which was kind of exciting. And they ask a couple questions like many of you. We love those questions. But again, when it comes to that, what is your risk factor? What is your time factor? And the illusion of could it continue to scream or not scream? Well, that's a different ballgame.
Well, and Scott, I want you to give me a real-world example to illustrate this point about how illusion can impact this financial planning.
Remember, I don't know if you remember this guy named Stephen Wright. Imagine you're in a desert and you see a UFO, and you see it land. 3 1-inch tall aliens get out. And when you ask, they're really, really small, they reply, no. We're really very, very far away. Distance changes perception. And of course, the same goes for money over time. If you don't account for the time value of money and inflation, you might really get yourself in a snafu problem. You might really financially secure or not. You need to know that. And that's what the concern is of the illusions of this area of money and your time.
And Scott, I know we're giving people a little preview of what's in the book, but I know from your vantage point, you would love for people to give you a call and to, ask sure about the book, get a copy of the book. But really, the book illustrates just the knowledge that you've built up over the years and how you've just seen these different, as you call them, traps, and you're really just out there trying to help people avoid them because you've just seen what has happened in the past, and you can kind of foresee, can not predict, but, some educated guesses of what might happen in the future.
Yeah, this is really, really important. If you have money in the market, should you be in or out, whether it's during a snowstorm, and should you change your portfolio? In other words, the weather could maybe change your thinking. Maybe it's an election coming up, or the election's passed. Who's running it? Maybe it's your friends are in your ear and they're trying to tell you need to get safer or you need to get riskier. This is where you really need to have someone really lean on. And I think about that when it comes to the interest rate and your time horizon when you need the money. Just imagine you invest 5% interest rate, and you got $100. Well, in 1 year, it's $105. That's called future value. You know what you know, what you know. But then again, someone owes you $105 in a year. Its present value is $100. Really simple. Now, if inflation is 3%, I'm not going to get any more numbers, but let's say that same $100 is now facing inflation. The purchasing power of that $105 will be less in a year than you might have thought you were going to get. So again, perceptions, deceptions, inflation, and we all know what that means by going to the grocery store and being able to buy a carton of eggs. Well, let's get a half a carton now. So again, the illusion of money can really, really disjoint people, and maybe they need to change their portfolio. Maybe they need to say, you know what, I can't handle this risk, or you know what, I can handle this risk. And they take a portion of their portfolio and throw it in a risky account because it's going to go to the kids, and they don't have a problem with it going up and down because that's for a long-term usage versus a short-term usage.
Scott, I want you to give that number out for folks and let people know how they can get that book. And any final thoughts here before we move on, any final thoughts about chapters 2 and 3?
Yeah, I think the book's called The Three Blind Mice, How the Financial Planning Leads Your Money to a Mousetrap. So, and the reason why I did that, Alex, if you want to get a hold of our book, 609-488-4646. That's our number. We'd love to have you pop in, grab a copy. We'll be happy to give it to you and talk to us about your situation. Again, you could have the book and all the education in the world, but applying the education is where the rubber meets the road. It's the application. So if you'd like you to get a copy of our book, please give our studios a call. We'd love to talk to you as well. Write your questions down. Come in and shake our hands, get a cup of coffee while you're here. 609-488-4646. And by the way, if we're back-to-back in meetings and you pop in, I apologize. I can't see you up front. I'll tell you that right now, but we'd love to get that in your hands.
609-488-4646. Scott, real quick, how does a salad say grace?
Wow, how?
Let us pray. This is Financial Insanity with Scott McLean, McLean Advisory Group. Thanks for joining us.
Stop for a moment and think about this. Do you know how much money in your 401k or IRA is actually yours? Or will the government take a bigger chunk than you thought? Remember, you still might owe taxes on that money, but do you have a plan to help make sure you don't pay more than you should? At McLean Advisory Group, we believe you deserve to keep more of what you've earned, which is why we're here to help you navigate the confusing world of retirement taxes. It's your money. You deserve to know what's at stake. Right now, taxes are historically low, but they won't be this low forever. So call the McLean Advisory Group team today so you don't miss out on this opportunity. 609-488-4646. That's 609-488-4646. You work hard for your money, and we'll work just as hard to help you keep it. McLean Advisory Group, 609-488-4646. Investment advisory services offered through Sound Income Strategies, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. McLean Tax Advisory Group and Sound Income Strategies are not associated entities.
Get all this stuff and you try to put it away like these hoarders on TV. It has an emotional attachment.
So, Scott, you're saying I don't have to keep every single drawing that my son has done? You're saying I could throw some of that away?
The answer is yes. You can take a picture, then throw it out.
This is Financial Insanity with Scott McLean, presented by McLean Advisory Group.
Well, Scott, we know every year we got to file our taxes, and it can be overwhelming, it can be complicated, but there is a proactive approach that pre-retirees should take. There is a difference between getting our taxes prepared and actually tax planning. And we know, Scott, the IRS tax code's full of thousands of sections and definitions, rules, fees, and guess what? Taxpayers legally bound to follow all of them, Scott. So it can be a lot. That's where working with somebody like you at least can help with the whole project and also looking ahead to try to prevent some of those taxes in the future.
Yeah. You know, you think about it, out of 450 words per page on the tax book, which is 2,652 pages of the tax code. The question is, are you getting the biggest bang for your buck? And so whether we're talking about in tax season, out of tax season, in preparing, this is important, Alex. You bring up this tax question you asked me because people are not paying attention to it. I'm going to give you a scenario just today where I was meeting a young woman helping her mom out and finding out that they were paying the highest tax on their investments. And this was totally undisclosed from their other advisor. I have two advisors, myself and another firm, which they never looked at the tax return, which we're going to talk about.
Well, and that's where it's really important, Scott. And my first question for you is going to be, when do we start thinking about the tax planning for the future? And I know what the answer is going to be, and that's evidence here with the case we're going to discuss. But talk about that a little bit. How do we go about planning for the taxes?
Yeah, for our younger investors, 20 to 40, I would say you really want to pay attention to investing in tax-free information called Roth. I like them, Roth 401k or Roth IRA. It's for older people that have already maybe in retirement already. You've already got your money. Maybe you start talking and thinking about tax planning for, do I do Roth conversions or is it worth doing Roth conversions? But the most important thing is looking at that tax return on a yearly basis, which is why I built the tax practice in 2008 for our clients. For the season of 2008, because tax returns tells us a lot. And God forbid your husband or wife passed away. Now you go from a joint tax return to an individual tax return. The taxes go up. And how do we avoid that? So tax planning is, when do you start planning? Well, I think you should think about that on a yearly basis. If you're younger, not that big of a deal. Unless you start making a big pay raise, that should be another discussion. And for retirees, this should be on a yearly basis. A quick thought, at the end of the year, you do your tax returns in April. And then, of course, maybe you meet your advisor when he or she asks to see your tax returns, maybe in June, July, August, for that quarterly or semi-annual meeting. That tax return is a viable, critical tool for some of you out there that maybe they're not asking for. They're actually putting you on the shelf because they say, well, I don't do that. Well, that's a problem. Maybe the advisor should call the tax guy before you come in to find out your real situation. This is a problem. Start right away.
Absolutely. And we're talking about trying to limit the tax burden as much as we can in retirement. That number, 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. And Scott, one thing that we do know is that the tax code, not exactly set in stone. It can change from one presidential administration to the next. So, I mean, how important is it? Do you discuss taking advantage of current tax planning opportunities before possible changes in policy?
You better out there pay attention to that. We've got the sunset rule coming out in 2025 where a lot is changing. 2025, a lot is changing, where we have the standard deduction, which is really yummy and very been beneficial. Well, that's coming off the table. And so when the federal tax break in 2025 comes off, I can promise you there is going to call the sunset. That's going to be a problem. So when you look at the tax code, that does change. It's changed since the very beginning. High to low to high to low. Reagan jumped in, they lowered it. But the question is, okay, now that we know what the tax code is, how do we plan? Not let's plan and then, oops, the tax code is there. You've got to look at this almost like a wonderful concert at the studio. When you go out and listen to music, is somebody off key or not? You know they're off key because if you're a musician. Well, the question is your portfolio off key causing you excessive taxes? And this is why the tax code And while the advisor doesn't have to be a tax person, but should at least call their accountant, know a little bit about taxes. I mean, that's just our business. As a fiduciary, you need to know about taxes. And then if you don't know the answer, then call somebody who's a lot smarter. But this is a big problem. Often I notice because they're unaware.
Scott, the age when someone has to start taking their required minimum distributions, RMDs, now 73 years old. Now, what impact can these RMDs have on taxes?
Well, Alex, I think we did one workshop together, one radio show on Social Security. Yep. So frankly, when you take out Social Security, you may not be paying any tax on it and your tax return looks yummy. Then all of a sudden you get a little older. Boom, you hit that wonderful age mark of 73, and now you have to take out your required minimum distribution. For those of you out there, use a simple number of 4%. How much is it going to be? Well, let's say you had $400,000 in a retirement plan. 4 times 4 is about $16,000, a little bit less, but use that for a good benchmark. So when you start taking out that 4%, every year it gets larger. Well, now, if you're married, have a spouse, you're filing joint, it might not affect you as much, but it could. But now all of a sudden, what happens if one of you pass away? Well, now you're a single, and now that could cause excessive taxes. So RMDs can be a large impact. And I can tell you, when we look at the tax returns, which is why I built the tax practice, God forbid one of our clients, the spouses, dies, we have to have that come to Jesus meeting saying, okay, here's what we need to plan for now. This is a big deal, Alex.
It absolutely is, Scott. And I want you to give that number here for folks and discuss, the fact that taxes, it is something that it's important for your practice, especially for your office. Something like you said, you established the group in 2008 to focus on it. And so just discuss how this is something that, your team has been involved with intimately for years and is right there to help discuss for folks that they're looking to help limit this in the future.
For our financial clients, we actually built the tax practice. As I said, in 2008, we started in 2007. And of course, that's after the big debacle in the stock market. And thank goodness people moved over to us. We preserved their money. We did a great job on a lot of different areas. But the tax returns was really very helpful when I started that, because I was concerned about our clients. And most people are unaware of taxes and don't like them and don't want to pay for them. So how can we get the biggest bang for the buck? And we just spoke about required minimum distributions, retirement, pension plans could change it. So we really need to be aware of that. You don't have to know how the electricity goes from the light pole to the switch, but you should know when you turn the switch on or off, how much excessive taxes are you going to pay? And this is to keep it real simple, as I think when I was talking to you earlier, Alex, today, how do we keep taxation simple? Let's dummy it down. But it can get really, with 4,000 pages, it can really get very, very challenging. And then people put their head in the sand and say, forget it, I'll just pay the tax. That's not good for me. So people need to be aware of that, Alex.
609-488-4646, the number for Scott and his team, McLean Advisory Group, 609-488-4646. Scott, a couple minutes left here in this segment. If you could go over, obviously protecting the confidentiality of the client, but go over a little bit of discussion you had recently and how that kind of, is relevant to our discussion here today.
So I have a client, a wonderful, lovely lady. Her husband passed away. Now she is filing single, and her daughter is involved, and they have 2 advisors, myself and another firm. What I found out today was that this client had a lot of money with that firm. They never disclosed it to me, and that's fine. So my tax planning really wasn't out there. Well, she just sold a huge property and made a tremendous amount of profit. And now the daughter is asking me, Scotty, I want to pull out money from my mom, and I want to pull it out on a monthly basis, and she's going to need to make up about $30,000 on a yearly basis. How do we do it? I said, let's go a quick summary, and I went through the summary. How much do we have? How much do we have in CDs, IRAs, 401ks? How much money are we pulling out? Well, Scott, you know that information. Yes, I do. But I just want to ask it again. And then, of course, I discovered that they had another $1 million with some other advisor, which is fine. I was happy for them. But I asked the question, your mom needs $30,000. Where is the money and how can she pull it out? And she said, well, Scott, all I'm seeing is that she's getting dividends and she's getting interest, but I don't know how to read the statement. Bottom line, let's say you're the client and you want to pull money out. Let's say you want to pull out $20,000 a year. Well, $20,000 a year, let's say on $400,000 at a 5% return on your money. Let's say we buy a CD at 5% on $400,000, there's $20,000. 3 different ways to invest. CDs and annuities. They're paying nice interest rates. Annuities will pay a longer period of time. They'll give you a longer interest rate, 3 to 5 years. And, of course, CDs won't pay as long. Let's say it's 5%, $20,000. That is all on the taxable line. 100% will be taxed. Now, let's say we go to a dividend, a non-qualified dividend. Well, the maximum non-qualified dividend could be up to 37% versus a qualified dividend, 20%. Let me break the numbers down. Would you like to pay tax on $20,000? Would you like to pay tax on $1,600 or tax on $800? That tells me where they need to invest in the non-qualified tools. So it doesn't need to be the areas. Now, the question is, are you a stomach for risk or not risk? And that we have that discussion. So again, I'm not sure where your tax situation is, but in her case, she was about to pay how she was going to invest that money, $4,000 when she only had to pay $800 after tax on that investment. This is a huge difference why the advisor needs to pay attention to taxes. And if you haven't looked at that and the advisor hasn't, which I asked her, I said, when you spoke to your advisor that's handling the positions, what did they say? Well, they never brought up taxes. Well, did they tell you the dividend ratio? Yes, we're getting $15,000 in dividends based on her portfolio. She was getting a dividend of 1.75% on the dividend. That's meager. So this is why you need to invest either for income or growth and how much you want to have at risk. So this could be different. I don't know about
Great
you.
example. Yeah.
But less taxes,
yeah,
it's good for me.
I'm for that. I am for that. If you're for that, the number 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. Well, there are more than 1 million tax preparers in the United States, so no shortage of help when it comes to tax time. But how do you find the right help with tax planning for your retirement? That's next.
Who likes uncertainty? Wall Street certainly does not. With near record inflation and partisan politics, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. What will America's future look like? What will your future look like? Will your taxes go up? Will your savings go down? For more than 40 years here in the Jersey Shore area, Scott McLean and the team at McLean Advisory Group have seen uncertainty come and go. No matter what the future holds, Scott can help you create a plan designed to preserve your finances in uncertain times. And it's not a matter of if those uncertain times will show up, but when. Call 609-488-4646 now to meet with Scott McLean and the team at McLean Advisory Group. If uncertainty is causing you to feel insecure, Scott McLean might be able to help. Call 609-488-4646 and schedule your visit today. Again, that's 609-488-4646.
Investment advisory services are offered through Sound Income Strategies, LLC. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Retirement planning, investment planning is a two-way street. It's got to meet. I need to understand the good, bad, and ugly you've been through so we can avoid those issues. This, to me, is very important.
We made it back. This is Financial Insanity with Scott McLean, presented by McLean Advisory Group.
A survey found that about half of taxpayers used paid tax professionals. But who should we turn to when it comes to tax planning in retirement? Scott McLean of McLean Advisory Group, here to talk about the different types of financial professionals and the benefits of working with a retirement planner, because there is a difference, right, Scott?
Huge difference. Yeah. I guess what I've found in my practice, whether you're working with an advisor who doesn't even look at the tax returns, well, that means you're left to do it yourself, and that could cause excessive work and maybe not knowing the questions to ask. Then you might be working with a financial advisor who does do taxes in their firm, and they do just the taxes. You put the information and they plug it in. But then the question is there a consultation after that meeting or not after that meeting? Now, if there is, the question is investments. When we look at the investments, how are the investments taxed? Now, you might be going to a financial planner that has a CFP, which is great, qualified financial planner. Maybe it's a CPA, a tax preparer that also is a financial planner. He could have both, which is great as well. And then maybe you have the PFS called personal financial specialist, again, with the credentials, again, looking at the full spectrum of the investments. That's great. Even better. Now, as a registered investment advisor or a advisor that is under a registered investment advisor, of course, we have fiduciary rules under the SEC, and so we have to follow those fiduciary standards, which is important to follow those. So this is really essential in my practice because we are under those registered investment advisory rules. And an advisor, we have to look at all the areas. Now, if a client doesn't want to share all the areas, well, then my hands are tied. But if they really want to come clean and say, here's what's going on in my life, whether they have one advisor, two advisors, maybe they do it themselves, or maybe they just want to wing it and call it a day. The comprehensive study on these areas of taxes along with their investment is where the attitude shifts towards financial planning. And I think this is why you want to find a guy or a gal in the retirement world that's going to look at those areas. But I take it one step further, Alex, which I know you didn't ask. But what if you pass away? We call it the 3D approach. The dreams, the dollars, and the dynasty. How does the taxation going to pass on to the kids? Earlier this morning, I had a discussion with the special needs father and mother. They have one son, and the money's going to pass on. Okay, did they set up the trust? Did they set up? This is, again, leading into the dynasty. So how does your tax implications going to pass on to the kids, or in this case, a special need kid? And again, this is a conversation. This is not a sales planning meeting. This is, are you a fit for our firm or not? If you're looking for a quick one-off sale, maybe you want somebody to call you every day to find the hottest, latest stock, that's not our firm. That's not what we do. We do more in-depth studies on how can I really make this person just buckled up, bulletproof as best as I can. And with the information they give me, how can we really reduce taxes, make sure their estate is buttoned up nice and tight. So when they passed away, the business transfers to the kids, or maybe their assets transfers. How do you want it transferred? And this is the legal part on top of the taxation part. So it's sorry, Alex, for the big answer.
How dare you?
This is not a simple question just on taxes.
No.
People don't like paying taxes. I don't either.
No, absolutely. And I appreciate that information. What I want, too, is that number, Scott, if people want to get a hold of you.
So I'd love to hear from you. 609-488-4646.com is our website. Again, a simple call our office at no cost, no obligation, 609-488-4646. If you have questions, I'm sure I have answers. And if I don't, I will get them. But I think I have the answers.
We're talking today about preserving your retirement from taxes. And Scott, if you're somebody here, you're thinking, you know what, I'm going to be retiring in the next few years. What are some things this person should be considering, especially when it comes to their taxes?
First thing is, what's the medical expenses going to be? Not only taxes. Number two, do you or do you not take money from a certain investment? You see, you might be in retirement. This might be your last year, 2024, 2025, 2026, and you're about to retire. You may say, let's defer as much income from my planning because I've got plenty of money in my other investments. Now you can reduce taxes now, and now when you're retired, you have no FUCA tax, Social Security tax. Your taxation is less because you're not taking income. So now how do we tax the dividends? Qualified, non-qualified. How do we tax the CDs? How do we tax the long-term, short-term capital gains? This leads into the discussion. If I'm about to retire, okay, when's the retirement? Let's look at the tax return. Let's look at the income, and let's figure out, should we defer or not defer money? If you're in retirement, this says, okay, how do we pull money out? Out of the tax-deferred account? Could be a Roth IRA. It could be an IRA, which should be higher, which could be totally taxed. It could be non-qualified money, or it could be qualified dividends versus non-qualified dividends. So if you're out there and scratching your head saying, what the fingernails did Scott just say? What? This is why you might want to give us a call off, in our show, or area show here at 609-488-4646. I can define it more, but again, with the limited time I have, this is not just a one-off subject. This is a planning subject. So whether you're planning now in retirement, or maybe you have 2 or 3 years, Alex, that's a great question. When do you start planning for this? Well, it depends when you're going to retire, but you should be looking at taxation on a yearly basis and how can you best get the biggest bang for your buck. I believe we should be taxed, but fairly, not unfairly.
Yeah. There are some things that we all need, but like you said, I just want to pay my fair share, no more than that. And yeah, we can discuss what fair means too, probably. But
exactly.
That number, 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. Scott, is it ever too late to get started on tax planning?
It's never too late to do any kind of planning. Unless you're dead, then you can't do any planning.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
That's probably the worst time. But yeah, you should do tax planning. If not, depending on what size your estate is. I mean, if you don't have that much money, maybe there's not much tax planning. If you're in retirement and you don't have a windfall profit, somebody died, you inherited money from your husband, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your kids maybe passed away early, and you receive IRA money versus non-IRA money, this is a discussion. But if you don't see a big change in your income, okay, maybe there's not much allowed. But again, you maybe win the lottery. This is a discussion. So again, each person's different. Everyone's not a cookie cutter, but I can tell you the tax return tells or can lead a really wise investment advisor who is tax prone, who wants to understand, can I reduce taxes? Legal mind, how can we pass money on? This is probably the right place for you at McLean Advisory Group.
And that number for Scott and his team, 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. And Scott, I know this is it's a tough question, but it's something to think about. But I mean, we're going to create a plan that addresses the taxes in the future, but how the heck do we do that when we don't know what the tax policy is going to be in 20, 30 years?
You stump me. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Because I think we can plan on taxes. Usually when a president puts a tax plan in place, it will stick. We have a plan coming off the table now, 2025, the sunset rules. That's going to really affect people's taxes in a very bad way. So maybe now we know this is happening in another year. So when do you do it? Probably this year. So if we know what's coming down the line, hopefully it's not approved or voted for, but if it is or isn't, you can do a little bit of planning. If this approves, this is the game plan. If this isn't approved, this is the game plan. So again, Alex, that's a good question, thinking about in the future, but they usually give us heads up. This is why Congress, I don't believe, should be able to play in the stock market, because they have heads up before we do. I think that's wrong. Well, when it comes to taxes, how do we play the game? Listen to what's going on. The financial advisor or your tax advisor should be aware. And by the way, if you're out there and you have your own business, I'm going to make a plug for a company called Bradford Tax Institute. Bradford Tax Institute. If you're a self-employed or have your great firm and you're building, you want to reduce taxes, they've got a great periodical, very condensed, very helpful. I make nothing from this promo at all. They're not paying me, but I want to make it very clear to you. It's a great, there's a lot of periodicals. This guy is on the ball. So again, Bradford Tax Institute could be a great resource for you self-employed people.
If you have questions about that or anything else, the number 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. Scott, just a little bit of time left, and talking about Social Security today, talking about taxes, and when it comes down to you, and sorry to date you, but somebody's celebrating a 41st work anniversary, I think it's significant because it speaks to the time that you've been around, the decades that you've seen, and you're somebody who can help discuss a comprehensive retirement strategy.
You know, we did just what you're saying, Alex, being in this business as long as I have, and I don't know what I would do. I love this business. I love helping people that want to be helped, by the way. There's some people who just listen to you and they blow off the knowledge. That's why I wrote the book, The Three Blind Mice. It really guides people through the challenges in the world. And I went back to 1982, 83 when I got licensed, and I go through that on the Three Blind Mice book. Now, by the way, if you come in and visit with me, I'll give you a book. Visit with me, have an appointment, do the CFQ. We'll be able to help you. But I think what's important on everything, listen to me right now, if you're not looking comprehensively at your total portfolio, whether you're married or single, maybe you have disabled children, maybe your husband or wife is disabled, what kind of planning do you need? And this is why the comprehensive study, the dreams, the dollars, and the dynasty is so important to look at those three aspects, because it takes you and look at you holistically, not simplistically. Because simplistic is, I'll do the tax returns, goodbye. Oh, I'll invest some money, goodbye. This dog don't hunt. We need to take an understanding of what you're doing and what's going on. And life has a way of changing all the time. Today you're healthy. Tomorrow you can't get out of bed. Okay, we need a game plan. This is important to discuss, Alex.
And what's that number, Scott?
609-488-4646. Give me a call off the air at our studios, 609-488-4646. No cost, no obligation. Love to share some information with you. And if you feel it apropos to come in, I think you would love the time you spend at our firm.
Stop for a moment and think about this. Do you know how much money in your 401k or IRA is actually yours? Or will the government take a bigger chunk than you thought? Remember, you still might owe taxes on that money, but do you have a plan to help make sure you don't pay more than you should? At McLean Advisory Group, we believe you deserve to keep more of what you've earned, which is why we're here to help you navigate the confusing world of retirement taxes. It's your money. You deserve to know what's at stake. Right now, taxes are historically low, but they won't be this low forever. So call the McLean Advisory Group team today so you don't miss out on this opportunity. 609-488-4646. That's 609-488-4646. You work hard for your money, and we'll work just as hard to help you keep it. McLean Advisory Group, 609-488-4646. Investment advisory services offered through Sound Income Strategies, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. McLean Tax Advisory Group and Sound Income Strategies are not associated entities.
I call it the chicken and the egg. The chicken is the investment. The egg is the dividend. And so when the chicken pops out the eggs, if you don't need the money, let's reinvest the eggs and buy more chickens.
Man, that's just an excellent analogy, Scott.
This is Financial Insanity with Scott McLean, powered by McLean Advisory Group.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Financial Insanity. We're having a great time as always. And in this segment, we wanted to get your questions. And so we're going to get some insights from Scott on some of your main retirement concerns, and then something fun here at the end. Scott, you're going to have to be on your toes here. We're going to do a lightning round of think fast questions. So
I appreciate that, Alex. I'm excited to tell people because we've gotten so many phone calls, and thank you for allowing me to give them to you so you can curate them to what the most common questions were. So let's get this party started.
Let's do it, my man. All right. So our first question here, we hear this a lot, but what could the impact be on my pension if I decide to retire early?
Great one. Thank you, John, who wrote that. John, let me make it real clear to you. Reduced monthly benefits. Could you reduce your monthly benefits? Number two, are you banking on your spouse's income or your significant other's income? If you're not banking on your other significant income, great. What does that look like? But then you must also think about, John, you must think about what if you became disabled and you needed extra money? Could that or could that not affect you? This is a critical decision when we talk about Social Security, as well as the many pension options that you're available to take. And this is mistakes. I call this the pension trap. So if you have questions out there, anybody about to take the pensions, you definitely want to give our studios a call, because this is one of the most disastrous choices when they pick the pension option. What option is the best for you? It's not a simple ABC, let's go to D. That's not the right. So please don't put that off. Please feel free to give me a call. I don't mean to throw a plug out there. No cost, no obligation. Call me in my studio, 609-488-4646. And again, thank you, John, for your call, 609-488-4646. Anybody else has questions and want to go on the air, Alex, I'll give them to you. Go ahead, next one.
Love it. As we're going through some listener questions today, another question we had coming in: how might healthcare costs affect my retirement savings? That's a big one.
It is a big one. When you think about the rising cost of health insurance, I just had a meeting yesterday with someone, and he said they had a health care plan, HSA. What a great way to hide and defer income for retirement, or for you and or your spouse. If you're married, if you're single, it's a different game plan. But are you using your HSA? Question is it an HSA, use it or lose it? Nah, unless you have health expenses for you or your spouse. The second question is going to be, if it's for both of you, can you not lose it? Can you carry it with you when you retire? Why? Because the rising of healthcare, the unplanned medical expenses, or for those of you who have teeth that need new teeth, that could be one heck of an expense for a medical that's unseen. Then you have long-term care costs going into retirement, and perhaps add in inflation. This could be a spanking. So again, if I were to warn you out there, Charlie, you wrote this, you and Susan wrote this, you kind of did it together. Thank you. This is a very important question when it comes to health care benefits and how it really can affect your retirement savings, because God forbid you get a major health illness and maybe your lights start to twinkle or go dim, and you have to have someone else care for each one of your loved ones. And if the kids aren't going to help out, it is a really, really expensive chore.
Scott, you hit on inflation. As we're going over listener questions today, if you have a question for Scott and his team, McLean Advisory Group, that number, 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. But how does someone calculate for inflation when trying to figure out if they've saved enough? I know, right?
What kind of question is that? I mean, and I look at this, Janie, when you sent that question into us, like, that's a really loaded question, because when you're trying to plan for inflation, we've just seen the rapid inflation from 2021-22, the rising of interest rates, the screaming of interest rate. We see bank failures happening because they had to buy government bonds to protect their money, and they have a bank situation. Man, that was a whole poop show of challenges. So I guess slow and steady wins the race, but we do need. So in inflationary times, usually stock does better. But sometimes we've just faced this. The market has been really volatile. If you think about 2022, it has been tremendous. If you had a bond or like instruments or income type instruments, you probably lost around 15 to 20%. But if you didn't get scared and your underwear didn't get dirty and you held on, you finally are starting to come back. So be very cautious on how you invest the money and understanding the process of what investments to go into, because there are inflationary investments that we can keep up. We saw the Treasury. We had some of you out there let me know when you bought that 9% inflationary bond. That was wonderful for a little bit of money based on your portfolio. Again, you need to adapt to the situations. And again, what is your risk tolerance? Should it be higher now with the rapid inflation? Because we have to keep up with the money. And then, of course, your lifestyle has to change for some of you, because you frankly can't go out to dinner maybe twice a week. Maybe it's twice a month because of inflation. You're buying this food. So again, that's a really good question. It's a really hard question. If somebody thinks they have a hedge on it, good for you. You can buy tools. I call equipment, but you can buy tools. But will it keep with the rapid inflation we have seen in this short period? I'm now 65, Alex. I've seen it in the 80s when it went skyrocketing, but it didn't do it. This skyrocket trip was faster than it was in the 80s.
609-488-4646. The number for Scott, 609-488-4646. Another question we got in here before we go to the rapid fire segment here. We're going to learn a little bit more about you, Scott. But first, a question, another one from a listener here is, when might be the right time to start planning for retirement?
Well, that is a $1 million question, and that should be the moment you start work.
Yep.
You see, if you're brand new, right out of the high school, maybe you're joining these armed services, congratulations, and you get a nice stipend, put away a minimum of 10%. That's gross. So if your income a month is $3,000, put away $300. If your income a month is $500, put away $50. It doesn't matter the numbers if you're real young. Now, if you're older and you've got to play catch up, and I had a nice meeting with the lovely couple the other day, and they said, you know what? We treated our kids. We spent a lot of money. We did a lot of fun sport things with our child and our children. And he said, you know, Scott, we didn't really plan. And now they're starting to sock money away. I said, maximize your 401k. So for each individual person, this is very important. By putting your head in the sand, like those ostriches, your vitals are exposed to the elements of inflation, stock market reduction, or stock market going tremendously well. You have a lot of left hooks, so you've got to take your head out of the sand and say, when do I plan? Now, when do I like to meet with people? If they're older, my age group, and I work with people, 55 and older, I'd like to meet with people at least 1 to 2 years ahead of time, worst case, 6 months. Now, for those of you that are just retired now, and you say, well, Scott doesn't want to meet with us. No, I'd love to meet with you. Frankly, this is, again, we're going to try to play catch up. We have to really maneuver things differently. But again, it's not a rushed plan. I see so many people going to financial planners, and they get this fancy 30, 40-page printout. That's good for one day. Next day, life changes. This is really important to understand what you need now, what you and your spouse, if you're married, or just you individually, how much do you need? How much does Social Security be? How much do I need to really live on? And then think backwards. What about the trips I want to take? So again, this planning is not a show up at an advisor's office and he does it for you or she does it for you. No, this is think through the process of all the variables, as we spoke about just early in this segment, the healthcare, inflation, Social Security, when do your pension options, they all tie together. In addition, don't forget taxes, because taxes could evaporate a great amount of earnings if taken from the wrong investment.
Great stuff today, and we really appreciate everyone who sent in questions. If you have a question for Scott and his team, McLean Advisory Group, the number is 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. All right, Scott, we're going to pivot here. We got 2 minutes.
You didn't plan anything? I got nothing planned.
I know. I know. I'm putting you on. You got to be on your toes here, Scott. All right.
Got it.
Which I know you can do, my friend. And so you got 2 minutes, and I'm going to just send you some questions. These are all easy questions because they're about you. Okay, you know you, but I don't want you dwelling on any of these answers because I want to try to get through as many as I can here in 2 minutes.
Got it.
All right. All right. Let's do it. 2 minutes on the clock. First question for you, Scott McLean. What's on your bucket list?
Growing my business. I want more locations. I love this business.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
Making mistakes and getting so mad at myself. I got to correct them. I hate making mistakes.
When you make that mistake, what's your favorite comfort food? Make you feel better.
I had it last night. Don't tell my wife. Twinkies.
I love it. Favorite athlete of all time?
It's Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Watching what he came from and where he was nobody when he was in high school. Nobody wanted him, and he pulled himself up by the bootstraps.
Yep.
Michael Jordan.
Love that answer right there. Favorite book?
I love the Bible, but on top of the Bible, I would tell anybody to get evidence that demands a verdict. I needed to know what I believe and why I believe, and that was almost like a Harvard graduate, the law book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh McDowell.
Very cool. We're halfway through it. Go to icebreaker story. Is there any sort of icebreaker story? You don't know somebody. Is there something you like to tell about yourself or something that happened? Any icebreaker story for you?
Yes, when I got hit by a car and the car left.
That's a good one. That's a good one because I would have questions. I'd have questions.
8 years old, and it was a life-changing alteration.
I bet. What about your morning routine? What's that look like?
Because I drive from the farm to the office, it's about a 45-minute drive, so I shower, get ready, and I have a quiet time by myself, me and my maker. We think about the day and what I need help on and just guidance.
I love it. All right, 2 more real quick. Holiday you look forward to the most?
Easter.
Oh, Very cool. I love it. And earliest financial lesson that you can remember.
When I was building a huge business and the government took it away, President Biden was involved in that. The biggest lesson was what you think is stable now may not be stable later. How do you plan?
I love it. What a great message. Scott McLean right there in a nutshell in 2 minutes. I appreciate you, my friend. That is great. And I appreciate all of our listeners. Again, if you have a question for Scott and his team, that number, 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. Scott, as always, good talking to you, my friend.
Thank you, Alex. You're wonderful.
And thank you all for listening. Have a great rest of your week.
This radio program may contain information which has gone regulatory or other significant changes since its original recording. The information and views expressed on today's show is educational in nature and is not intended to be a recommendation for any specific investment, product, strategy, plan, tax, or legal advice. Information presented is believed to be factual and up to date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy. Investment advisory services offered through Sound Income Strategies, LLC, a SEC-registered investment advisory firm. McLean Advisory Group and Sound Income Strategies, LLC, are not associated entities.
This radio show is a paid placement.